Have you ever wondered why some people are attracted to the same sex while others are attracted to the opposite sex? It's a question that has intrigued humans for centuries, sparking debates, research, and even conflict. But let's take a moment to unravel this complex and fascinating concept known as sexuality. When we talk about sexuality, we're referring to an inherent aspect of who we are as individuals. It's about whom we're attracted to and how we express that attraction. Sexuality isn't a choice. Just like we don't choose our height or the color of our eyes. It's an intrinsic part of us that exists from the moment we're born. Now you might be thinking, okay, but what about gender? Well, that's a great question. While gender and sexuality often get lumped together, they're actually distinct aspects of our identity. Gender refers to the social and cultural roles associated with being male or female, while sexuality relates to our romantic or sexual attractions. One crucial point to understand is that sexuality is not binary. It's not just about being heterosexual or homosexual. Instead, it's a spectrum encompassing a wide range of attractions and identities. Some people might be exclusively attracted to the opposite sex, some to the same sex, and others might find themselves attracted to all genders. There's no right or wrong here, only what feels right for each individual. It's also worth noting that our understanding of sexuality has evolved massively over the years. What was once considered taboo or unnatural is now recognized as a normal part of human diversity. Today, we acknowledge and celebrate the spectrum of human sexuality, understanding that it contributes to the rich tapestry of human experience. So, there we have it. Sexuality, in essence, is about attraction, identity, and expression. It's an inherent part of who we are, and it's as diverse as humanity itself. It's not a choice, but rather a fundamental aspect of our individuality. Now that we've understood what sexuality is, let's delve into some surprising truths about it. Did you know that Alfred Kinsey, a renowned sexologist, proposed a scale to measure an individual's sexual orientation? Let's delve into the fascinating world of Alfred Kinsey, a pioneer of sexology in the mid-20th century. Born in Hoboken, New Jersey in 1894, Kinsey led a rather typical life until his entry into the field of sexology. His groundbreaking work forever changed our understanding of human sexuality. Kinsey's most significant contribution to the field was the introduction of the Kinsey scale in 1948. The scale, ranging from 0 to 6, was a revolutionary concept at the time. It proposed that sexual orientation could be measured on a continuum rather than a binary scale of strictly heterosexual or homosexual. 0 represented exclusively heterosexual behavior, while 6 signified exclusively homosexual behavior. Those falling in between these two extremes demonstrated varying degrees of both behaviors. This was a radical departure from the prevailing societal norms of the time. The Kinsey scale opened up a conversation about the fluidity of sexuality. It asserted that people could be predominantly heterosexual or homosexual, but not exclusively so. The scale was a testament to the complexity and diversity of human sexuality. However, it's important to note that Kinsey's work was not without controversy. Critics argued that his research methods were flawed, that he oversampled certain populations and undersampled others, leading to skewed results. Despite the criticism, the Kinsey scale remains a fundamental tool in the study of human sexuality. The enduring power of the Kinsey scale lies in its ability to challenge the binary perception of sexuality. It offers a more nuanced understanding of human sexual behavior, encouraging people to see sexuality as a spectrum rather than a rigid categorization. However, as with any scientific theory or model, it's crucial to remember that the Kinsey scale is just one lens through which we can view sexuality. It doesn't encapsulate the entirety of human sexual experience, but it does provide a starting point for understanding the fluid nature of sexual orientation. Kinsey's scale was just the beginning. Let's explore more surprising truths about sexuality. Have you ever thought about how different cultures perceive sexuality? Well, it's a fascinating exploration. Throughout history and across the globe, attitudes towards sexuality have varied drastically. In some ancient cultures, for instance, same-sex relationships were not merely accepted, but celebrated. In ancient Greece, it was not uncommon for men to have relationships with both men and women, a practice seen as a form of mentorship and bonding. Meanwhile, in some Native American tribes, the concept of two-spirit people existed. These individuals often crossed what we perceive as gender norms, embodying traits of both men and women, and were seen as gifted by nature, often holding revered roles within their communities. On the other side of the globe, India's ancient texts, the Vedas, referenced a third gender distinct from men and women. This third gender, often referred to as Hijra in modern times, has been part of South Asian societies for centuries. And although they face discrimination today, they have a long history of inclusion in spiritual and royal courts. But not all cultures have been as accepting. In many societies, sexuality has been repressed, sometimes brutally. The Victorian era, for instance, is notorious for its prudishness and moral strictness regarding sexuality. This repression wasn't without consequences, leading to a culture of secrecy and shame that has had long-lasting effects. Even today, the perception of sexuality varies widely. In some parts of the world, open discussions about sexuality are encouraged, while in others, such conversations are taboo. These cultural attitudes can have profound impacts on individuals, affecting their self-perception, mental health, and even their physical well-being. It's important to understand that these are not just historical footnotes or distant cultural practices. They shape our present understanding of sexuality, influencing laws, societal norms, and personal attitudes. Cultural perspectives on sexuality are varied and complex, but what does science have to say? Can our genes dictate our sexual preferences? This question has intrigued scientists and researchers for decades. The quest to understand the relationship between genetics and sexuality has led to a number of fascinating studies. On one hand, some research suggests that there is indeed a genetic component to sexual orientation. A study published in the journal Science in the late 90s found that identical twins were more likely to share the same sexual orientation than fraternal twins or siblings. This suggested that genetics do play a role in determining our sexual preferences. Another study, conducted more recently, used the largest ever genetic dataset of people who reported having had same-sex sexual behavior. The researchers found 5 genetic variants associated with same-sex behavior, reinforcing the idea that genetics may indeed shape our sexuality to some extent. However, it's important to note that these studies don't suggest that there's a single gay gene or straight gene. Instead, they indicate that a multitude of genes, each with a small effect, may contribute to our sexual preferences. On the other hand, there are studies that refute the idea of a strong genetic influence on sexuality. They argue that environmental factors and personal experiences play a significant role in shaping our sexual orientation. A study published in the journal Psychological Science found that the sexual orientation of adopted siblings was no more similar than that of randomly selected pairs of individuals. This suggested that shared family environment doesn't strongly affect sexual orientation. So where does this leave us? The truth is, the science of sexuality is complex and multifaceted. It's likely that both our genes and our environment play a role in shaping our sexual preferences, but how much each contributes remains a topic of ongoing debate in the scientific community. In the end, what's clear is that human sexuality isn't a simple matter of genetics or environment. It's a complex interplay of nature and nurture. While science continues to explore the genetics of sexuality, it's clear that it's a complex interplay of nature and nurture. So, what are some surprising truths about sexuality? Let's take a moment to reflect on what we've covered so far and draw together the threads of this rich tapestry. Firstly, let's not forget that sexuality is fluid. It's not set in stone. It's a dynamic, ever-evolving aspect of who we are. You may have grown up thinking you had to fit into a certain box, but the reality is, there's no box. There's no normal. There's no right or wrong. There's just you and your individual experience. Secondly, sexuality exists on a spectrum. It's not a binary concept. It's not just about being heterosexual or homosexual. As we've seen with the Kinsey scale, there are many degrees of sexual orientation, and it's okay to be anywhere on that spectrum. Now let's talk about culture. Our culture greatly influences our understanding and acceptance of sexuality. Different cultures perceive sexuality in different ways, and these cultural lenses can shape our attitudes and beliefs. Moving on to genetics, it's worth noting that the science is still out on this one. While there's evidence that genetics can influence sexual orientation, it's not the whole story. It's a complex interplay of nature and nurture, and we're still trying to unravel this intricate puzzle. But perhaps the most surprising truth of all is that despite the advances in research and understanding, there's still a lot we don't know about sexuality. The mystery remains, and that's okay. It's a testament to the complexity and diversity of human experience. So what does all this mean for you? It means that it's okay to be curious, to question, to explore. It means it's okay to be you. Understanding and accepting diverse sexualities is not just about tolerance or political correctness. It's about recognizing the richness and complexity of human experience. It's about embracing the diversity that makes us who we are. As we continue to explore and understand sexuality, it's important to remember it's a personal journey, unique to each one of us.